Hey everybody, Mike McWilliams upstairs to the right music. So just as a quick channel update, so unfortunately this is not from Amsterdam as I thought I would be doing. There is still some problems with the visa application, so it's actually delayed the move a bit. Actually, as a result of me traveling to Amsterdam to try to clear that up and then returning back here to Singapore, I have to do a 2-week quarantine detention and a hotel room. So, so I can't even go back to my own house to do this detention. I have to do it here at this hotel room, about 20 minutes from where I was living at before, but you know, that's part of the price you pay for doing business these days. So I'm okay with it. It's actually a nice place. I got a nice view. It's a nice room. Yeah, I can't set foot out of it for 2 weeks, but I've only got about a week or so to go now. So it's okay. I'll be back to the house, and then I'm really not going to be doing any traveling until I get this visa thing completely sorted out. That's a whole long story of how that went itself. I don't even want to get into, but traveling these days with, you know, the restrictions on travel, you're going to run into a lot of hurdles out there. And I will tell one story. I did fly to Amsterdam, as I said, it was quite an experience to be on a jumbo jet with only 30 people on it. The whole back of the plane was completely dark and empty. I've never seen anything like it. It's quite a shocking, striking thing to see. The airport in Amsterdam was most of the shops, most of the stuff was completely closed down, as was the airport here. So, you know, for the last 5 months, I've pretty much been, you know, at the Upstairs to the Right studio, and to get out and to see things how they really are going on in this part of the world and in Europe right now, it's quite a shocking thing to have seen. But in any case, in another week, I will be able to return back to my regular place, and until the visa process does complete. So no problems there. Just I don't have any equipment. I have no guitars. I'm just really happy that I kept my camera so that at least I can film. So that's my update on what's going on right now. As a topic today, I thought that I would talk about vintage guitars, and is that market dying? You know, in my travels, I've been to a lot of vintage guitar shops, and I've seen a lot of vintage guitars. Man, you know, it's been really quite an experience to hold and play, you know, 50s and 60s guitars. Am I of the opinion that they're superior to the ones now? No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I may have said before, and I'll say it again for everybody who's new, that I think that the new guitars are superior in a lot of ways to the vintage ones. I mean, if you look at the old Fenders, some of the plastics were, and the tuning pegs on the old Gibsons, the plastics were so cheaply made that they break, you know. And that's why you'll very rarely find one that has the original tuning pegs on it, because they eventually break. So, you know, and then of course when you start getting into doing modifications on those guitars, their values drop down as far as collectors are concerned. I was reading one article in preparation for this video just now, where the guy was saying, hey, you know, I've been in the vintage guitar market since, you know, 1964, and my question is, you know, when I go to these when I was going to the trade shows in the 70s and 80s and the early 90s, there was X amount of vintage guitars. But nowadays, when I'm going there, there's twice as many as those. So what's up with that? And in his opinion, and he's probably right, that there are a lot of faked vintage guitars out there on the market. And as I said before, you know, don't get into something unless you really know it. And if you take one vintage guitar to 10 different guys to have them appraise it, they're all going to have different opinions. It's going to be all over the place. And so, you know, that's a really dangerous market to get into, vintage guitars. Do I think that that market is dying? Yes, I do. You know, there was only, I think, of the original, I read somewhere it said, of the original broadcasters, so the predecessor to the Telecaster, there was only something like 500 or so made. And yet, you know, most of those, let's say 25% of those haven't, you know, lasted over the test of time. They got trashed, or they got modded so much that you wouldn't even recognize them anymore. And let's say that other 75%, most of those are held in private hands. So, you know, that is a rarity issue. But how many guys going forward are going to be hashing out the kind of money that it would take in order to buy one of those when they do hit the market? And when one does hit the market, you really have to ask yourself, is this really legit or not? So you see, there's an issue there with the vintage guitars. And that gets back to my last show where I said the best thing you can do is just buy the best guitar that you can afford. And it also gets back to my point about never spending more than $2,500 on a guitar. Because again, that law of diminishing returns kicks in, even with vintage guitars. Because there was one point where a 60s Jazzmaster in 2001, I think it was 2001, they were going for 25 or 20 to 25,000. By the mid-2000s, they had hit 75,000, and after the 2008 crash, they had gone back down to $25,000. So, you know, that was a huge swing on that thing, and if you didn't sell it in that sweet spot up there at 75, or if you bought it at 75, you were definitely in a lost position. So how many guys going forward are going to be able to afford to put that kind of money out? How strong is that market? You know, Norm's Rare Guitars out in my hometown, Los Angeles, out in Van Nuys, Ventura, you know, he's kind of cornered the market. I mean, he literally has a warehouse that's full of vintage guitars, and he piecemeals them out. He'll bring out a few every now and then to put them on the market, but for the last 40-50 years, that guy has been stockpiling them away. So he really controls the market. If he floods the market with Jazzmasters, then you're going to see a decrease. So he doesn't. The ones that he does have, he's putting them out piecemeal. But even those eventually, you know, he's going to run out of those. So, you know, what's going to happen to the market at that time? Because he's setting the market. When there's nobody like Norm anymore setting the market, what are the true values of these things? I have a 1977 Greco, Japanese-made guitar, Les Paul copy. It's a vintage guitar. There are collectors out there that really love those Japanese vintage guitars, but they're not going for outrageous money at all. I mean, you can get one, as I've said before in the past, for $400 or $500 plus shipping. So, you know, what is the real story there? So, is it a superior instrument? Very rarely. Will there always be a market for it? Yes and no. It really depends upon the economics of the time, and right now we're going through bad economic times, so you can pretty much will see that market leveling off. Do you have to be an expert in order to purchase one? Yeah, you kind of do, because again, you know, if this guy Ed was his name. He had a shop in Las Vegas. He passed away in 2011, but he would write these stories where he was, you know, before he passed away, and he was saying, "Look, man, you know, there's more vintage guitars out on the market now than there was when they weren't so-called vintage, you know. How did that happen? Another story, it's not about guitars, but this furniture guy who dealt with 18th century furniture, he says there's more 18th century furniture available out on the market now than there was in the 18th century. So anytime you have something that has a high value to it, there's going to be a load of cats who can counterfeit. And my own luthier, Wayne, he makes really good guitars that, in my opinion, are superior to Les Pauls. But if he wanted to, I don't think it would be any problem for him at all, being a master luthier, to come up with something that you and I and most ordinary folks would not know the difference. You would look at it and you say, oh, okay, this looks about right, and you would think it was the real deal. So how many cats out there have done that over the years, you know, over the last 40-50 years? So something to think about. Anyway, that's today's topic. I thought I would throw out there, you know, I thought it was an interesting subject. Down in the comments section, tell me what you think about the whole vintage guitar market thing. Is it really worth getting into? Again, I'll state my opinion. I think so, no. I do have, you know, vintage guitars. Any guitar that's 25 years or older is considered vintage. But I would never spend more than $2,500, as I've said before, on a guitar. And that's about it. Because the law of diminishing returns, we've talked about this. So down in the comments section, I'd love to hear what you think about this subject. Next video, I'll probably still be here. So until the next time, I'll see you from my lovely hotel room here in downtown Singapore. You guys take care. See you later. Bye-bye.